Hi everyone, Helena here, and I am joined this morning by the fabulous Lauren Wireman, who is one of our 5 Nail Coalition experts who has set this challenge for you and who you will be designing a nail representing Lauren. So we're going to find out all about her. So welcome, Lauren, and thank you for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Now, you wear a lot of hats, don't you, in your role in nails? What are those hats?
Oh, well, I'm the CEO of a company called Wildflowers. And I'm also a competition judge. So I do a lot of traveling, a lot of judging. And I do some mentoring as well. So different people in the industry, I mentor them. And so, yeah, there's a lot going on at the moment. Thankfully, I'm not doing nails full time anymore, or that would just be too much.
So have you got a particular aspect of your role that's your favorite aspect and that gives you the most kind of gratification, I guess?
I love designing curriculum. That's probably my favorite thing that I do. There's something really satisfying about organizing information and presenting it in a way that the students really grasp and understand it. And I found that just in my experience teaching, I'll put together a class and then I'll run the class. And as I'm doing the class, I take note as to like what worked and what didn't work. And sometimes, in the moment when somebody's not getting something, you come up with some really wacky, creative way to try to explain it differently. And that actually works really well. So then going back to the drawing board, putting that part into the curriculum and just kind of continuing to refine it until I get it to a place where I feel like, okay, this is a really solid class. And then once I do that, I'm like, okay, now let me write another class.
Really, I mean, you're always on the go. I think the last time I saw you was at Premier Orlando last year, and you had swarms of people around you. You couldn't even get close to you because people were so eager to kind of learn from you and ask you questions and learn more about your products. I mean, how does it make you feel being such an industry icon and someone that's so in demand?
I mean, it only feels that way when I'm at a show. Like the rest of my life, I'm just me. And nobody knows. It's funny. My favorite thing to do, and I tease everybody, is to go into a beauty school because unless the teacher really knows who I am in the industry, they don't know who I am and they don't care who I am. And it's very humbling experience to walk into a beauty school or a nail school when nobody knows who you are, because it will deflate your ego very, very quickly. But it's only really like that when I'm at events.
So more events needed. But I mean, tell us about your nail industry journey. How has it evolved? Because you have all of these hats now and you're wearing these hats and doing them so well. When did you first find an interest in nails? Tell us your story.
I didn't set out to do nails at all. I went to college for art. And when I was in college, I didn't do very well because I was struggling with a lot of mental health stuff. I started having panic attacks and dealing with that sort of thing when I was 15. And so I never really could figure out what I wanted to do when I grew up. It was all undiagnosed ADHD, which we know now that I'm 41. But back then we didn't really know and understand what it was. But I had the biggest problem I was having was panic attacks and anxiety. And so I started self-medicating, smoking pot, doing drugs, things like that. And so I got to college. I didn't do well. My parents, were like, we're not going to pay for you to go back there if you're not going to take it seriously. So what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, I don't know. So I called up my friends from college and I was like, what do you guys think I should do? And they were like, you should go to beauty school. And I was like, okay. So that was sort of how I ended up in beauty school. I went for cosmetology. I had no interest in nails at all, and graduated. Then I ended up really getting addicted to drugs bad after I graduated. And so I ended up totally homeless, in a homeless shelter. And again, faced with the question, what are you going to do with your life? And at that point, they were like, it was kind of like the movie Sister Act. They were like, give your life to Jesus. And I was like, what? But I was like, ooh, maybe I'll try it. I could be a cool nun, like I didn't know what was going to happen. It sounded like a crazy adventure. And so, in really like kind of surrendering my life over to God, it was like, I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know where I would end up. I wanted to become like a vet tech and work with animals, but the only door that opened for me was the beauty industry again. And I was like, oh, I don't want to go back into the beauty industry. And then once I ended up back in the beauty industry, the only door that really opened was nails. And I didn't know anything about nails. I remember seeing like a nail magazine and being like, wow, this is like really a thing, isn't it? And so from there, it was funny. It was like every door around me was just closed, and my license had lapsed, so I couldn't do hair. I could only be like the shampoo girl. So I would shampoo people's hair, and the only girl I could really hang out with at the salon, because I was trying to be clean and sober, the only safe girl at the salon happened to be the nail tech. And she was like, you're so good at art. You should really just let me teach you how to do manicures. And I was like, no, I don't want to do nails. Nail techs don't make any money. And I still was just resisting it every chance I could. And so I finally gave in and I started doing nail art. And then I had an opportunity to become a nail instructor at a beauty school, which I loved. So I did that for a while. And then I finally opened my own place and started entering competitions and doing stuff like that. But the product line came from teaching. I was cutting brushes from the craft store and mixing my own paints. And so everybody always just wanted what I used. And there weren't any companies that really just did art products back then. This was like back in 2010. And so that was how I started my brand, was because I was like, we're just going to focus on art stuff and really like make good brushes and good paints and good glitters that don't bleed and the things that nail techs really need. And so we were the first brand in the United States to have the silver chrome powder when all of that happened. And so it was just crazy after that.
It just went wild. It went wild. But...
It did.
And do you spoke a bit about your faith. Do you think that's really helped you on your journey?
Oh, yeah. Like to this day, I know that there's just no way, like the world is too crazy and drugs are just too available everywhere. And I thank God every day that I wake up that I'm clean and sober. Like really, truly, it's really been my faith that has kept me like on the straight and narrow. So yeah, definitely a huge part.
Amazing. And you spoke about your brand, Wildflowers, and you've got a beautiful logo. What's the meaning behind the logo, its colors, its name?
Well, so when I lived in a homeless shelter, and I mean, it was a homeless shelter, so I had like nothing. I worried so much. I remember there was this guy that worked there. He was like a cool Christian. He had like dreadlocks and he'd wear like the cool t-shirts. And he wasn't some stuffy church person, So I was like, I'm going to go talk to this guy. He seems really cool. And so every time I would go talk to him, I'd be complaining about this or worrying about that. And he was like, Lauren, do you know there's this scripture in the Bible that it's in Matthew, and it's where it says, like, if God cares so wonderfully for the wildflowers that are so beautiful and they're here today and gone the next day, he'll certainly care for you. And that always stuck with me because I always was just worrying. And it even goes on to talk about the birds. Like, look at the birds. You don't see them getting up and going to work and being like, oh no, what are we going to eat today? And so for me, that was sort of one of the things that reshaped my life going forward, and something that always stuck with me. So when I was opening my little salon that I started, I was trying to figure out what to name it. And I had opened my Bible that morning and that scripture popped up. And I was like, oh, Wildflowers, that'd be such a cute name for a salon. And then, of course, it just carried through and, became attached to the brand as well.
Oh, I love that. That's such a lovely story. And it's so interesting to learn details like that about you. It's fantastic. So I think the Lauren now, how do you feel about the Lauren now and everything that you've achieved?
I mean, it's unbelievable. I wake up some days and I'm like, I can't believe I have a family. Like, I can't believe I live in a house. I can't believe I run a business. But at the same time, I think I think as a business owner, taking risks doesn't scare me the way it scares other people. Cause I'm like, I've been homeless before. Like, losing everything doesn't scare me at all. And I think my family looks at me like I'm crazy. Because they just have no idea, what it's like to live like, well, my kids maybe do. All my kids are adopted. So they've all come from very, very rough backgrounds. But I think my husband sometimes and other people that I'm around find it a little shocking that I'm so willing to take risks. But risk is a necessary part of doing business, and it's a necessary part of life. And I think if I wouldn't have taken some of the risks that I did take, I wouldn't have what I have now. So.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's I think that's so true as well. It's so nice to kind of hear things like that. And risk can be good, change is good as well. And I mean, over your journey in the nail industry, you've won various competitions for your amazing nail art and your talent. So do you have a particular style of nail art that people look at and think, yeah, that's a Lauren Wireman? Or do you have a particular style or nail art look that you enjoy creating the most?
I think it takes a very keen eye to be able to say like, ooh, I feel like Jan Arnold could definitely look at my stuff and be like, oh, that's definitely Lauren Wireman. Because she's just so in tune with everybody's like work and so intimately acquainted with it. I'd say if I had to describe my work, it's usually um, probably positive. Like, it's always gonna feel a little light and a little airy and a little happy. I don't do a lot of like dark stuff. It's just not my style anyway. So I like clean looking art. I love sophisticated color palettes, definitely. When I am creating artwork, I definitely take my time when it comes to picking out my color palette. I try to work very clean. I try to be very detail oriented, and pay attention to all of the little details in my work.
Amazing. Well, hopefully that gives our competitors a bit of an insight there. Are there any mediums that you prefer working with?
I love just painting. I love flat art. I love painting with gel paints, I think, more than anything. Um, and I even just in my own work that I do, I gravitate towards very highly detailed, very meticulous artwork. I'm definitely a detail person, a precision artist. I Abstract is a huge challenge for me. I force myself to do it. But if I had to pick what I would do, it would always be something super detailed, something, very, very like meticulous and little teeny weeny lines and things like that.
Basically not making things easy for yourself.
Yeah, there's something, it's funny. I think so much of what we do is chaotic, right? Like, I find this is the funniest thing about me, but I'll teach a class for like an entire week. And as I walk through the classroom, I notice like crumbs from like potato chips on the floor and like glitter spilled here and little like, pieces of nail forms on the floor. And it literally drives me bonkers. And the most satisfying thing for me is after I finish a class, you will find me with my Dyson vacuum cleaner, just like it does something mentally for me to just vacuum the floor. And I'm not even the type of person that has to do it in perfect stripes, but just something about doing that. I think it's because you get that instant result, like that instantaneous, automatic, like what the result's going to be when you run the vacuum over the carpet. And there's just something about that where, like, I don't know, abstract stuff to me is just like too out of control and crazy. So there's just a part of me that gets an extreme amount of satisfaction out of like vacuuming and flat ironing people's kinky hair. I'm like, ooh, I just want to come at them with a flat iron, So putting things, I guess, into order and like organizing, the chaos there's just something about that for me. And I think it carries through a lot of different parts of my life. I mean, I'm fine with like making a mess, but there's something so satisfying about cleaning it and organizing it and putting it back together.
I love that. So, I mean, now we know that you're clean and organized and you hate the mess. And we also know that you're a bit of a risk taker. But if your, say, friends and family could describe your personality, how would they describe you?
Bubbly. I hear that a lot. I have a bubbly personality. My kids think I'm hilarious. I mean, I don't know if that's really true. Definitely, yeah, I would say bubbly and upbeat and uh positive. I do burst bubbles though. Like I'm definitely somebody who will look at a situation and definitely look at all sides. It's fun to be optimistic about things a lot of times, but there's definitely always another side to look at. So I think like even with going into business deals or people are like, I want to be a distributor. And I'm like, no, you just want to have a cute little area that you like organize with like bottles and stuff that looks really cute. You don't want to do like the whole dirty side of distribution. Like they just have no idea. So I think like giving people a reality check is something I do a lot as well.
A great quality to have, but a fantastic quality for a successful businesswoman, because you wouldn't be like that if you didn't take the rough with the smooth sometimes, I think. So
yeah.
Awesome. And then I think obviously we know you're super busy because you wear all of these hats, as I've said, but do you have any hobbies outside of nails or things that you like doing with your family?
Oh my gosh, yes. It's so funny. I love to go foraging. So we live on like 30 acres and we have this whole like forest. And there's so many mushrooms out there. And I've been so intrigued over the last few years with all of the different mushrooms. So like I go mushroom hunting. And it's almost the season for mushroom hunting, but we have these like wonderful like chanterelle mushrooms that are edible and morels and I think I've cataloged. It's so funny because people are always so shocked, but I have an app on my phone and I've cataloged, I think over like 100 different species of mushrooms just here, like in the woods by our house. And so I love that. That's been sort of my hobby. I was into ceramics for a while, but since we've moved here to like the Atlanta, Georgia area, mushrooming has been my newest hobby for the last few years.
You know what? I'm finding out so many fascinating facts from the Nail Coalition about hobbies that you each have. And you think you're so busy doing nails, but some of the hobbies that have come up in these 5 interviews have been quite fascinating, but I think that tops them all.
Oh my gosh. Well, there has to be a way to like just unplug and disconnect from everything. So for me, like my phone is always buzzing and dinging nonstop. And I'm always like, oh my gosh, I get so happy to just, like shut my phone off and escape and get out. Like my kids bought me a hammock for my birthday, like one that you just string between 2 trees. And I'll just go off into the woods and disappear for 4 or 5 hours and leave my phone here. Just to connect with nature, because I really enjoy the outdoors and I love just like looking at the detail. Even with mushrooms, it's so funny. There's these like teeny weeny, like tiniest little mushrooms, and you have to like almost take a picture with a macro lens and zoom in on it to see the detail. But there's so much detail in nature, and I really enjoy that a lot.
Amazing. I think there's so much inspiration there for our top 12. Now, just sort of wrapping up, being a very successful competition winner yourself and knowing the challenge that our top 12 have you got any advice when it comes to thinking about their design or creating their design even?
I would say from all the years of competing, there's 2 things that I get stuck on a lot when I'm giving advice. The first thing is to just please like do something that we haven't seen before. I think it's so easy for us as nail artists to be like, oh, like under the sea, or, like the Last Supper, like what, like just things that are so like, you just see it over and over, fairies and butterflies. Like, don't put any fairies or butterflies in a forest with mushrooms on my nails, okay? Like, you can do the mushrooms, but like, please don't add fairies and butterflies to it. There's just, I think the common themes are just so wore out. And I, as an artist, have so much appreciation for seeing somebody go out of the box. Like, sure, do mushrooms, do whatever, but put a new spin on it. Do like steampunk mushrooms, you know, like just do something that we haven't seen before. So I think that's probably my number one thing that I like really harp on with people. And then the second thing that I get on people a lot, especially when it comes to like more flat art, is graphic quality, the theme of graphic quality. So making sure that if you're going to do like you know, a mural, that you're seeing foreground, midground, and background. And background's always kind of soft and fuzzy. Foreground, it's like scale. When I put my hand like this, it's as big as like, you know, look at the size of my hand compared to the size of my face. Like, this is foreground here. And then there's midground, which is kind of in the middle, and then there's the background back here. And when you're missing one of those, like a lot of people will miss the midground, or they'll go to put something that should be in the background, like a hot air balloon or like a bird, and they'll be like, let's make it 3D. And then it's like, bam, right here. And you're like, whoa, wait, that should be in the background. So I think like understanding with the planes and art where things should go is very important artistic skill to have and to understand. Like highlighting, shadowing obviously is going to accentuate the graphic quality in art. But yeah, I could preach like a whole sermon on graphic quality. I think I actually have like a 45-minute class just on graphic quality because it can really make or break your art. So I think really learning and understanding what you're being judged on and the themes in art, like color theory, are so vitally important to, I think everybody here is a good artist, but if you don't understand the concept of how to like put your best foot forward artistically by understanding those fundamental things about art, it can really hinder you. So learning that like boring stuff, you know, the first year I was an art student in college, I was like, oh, color theory, you know, and it's like, even to this day, if somebody says like value or hue, I'm like, wait, what is that again? Like, you know what I mean? But those are the things that are just so incredibly important. And that's why like they come at you the first year of art college and try to teach you that stuff. It's because it's such a fundamental part of what we do. So I would say when competing, like, you know, when you get to a certain level, if you don't understand those art themes, know that that can really push your artwork to a whole nother level.
Brilliant. Such amazing advice. Thank you so much. And just finally, you've achieved so much, but is there anything else you're yet to achieve or tick off your list?
Honestly, like I wanted to get a lot of the laws changed here. I wanted to get like the education in the United States changed. Then I found out that like it is so complex because, you know, we have 50 states and every state kind of governs itself in regard to the regulations for nail techs and cosmetologists. So changing education in this country, it would be like fighting 50 battles in each, you know, like you'd have to go fight a battle in every single state. And it's so complex. That's something that I always wanted to see change. So I hope that eventually, somehow, some way in the United States, we can get to where, you know, it's all being governed from a central place. And those rules and regulations are going clean across the country. And if that ever happens, I will be pulling every string for every connection that I have to try to get in there and give my input, because I see so many ways that we can improve education here. And it's just something that I haven't really been able to be that impactful. I wanted to open a school originally, but when I realized that there's already so many schools that are open that like are not doing a very good job teaching, then I kind of just stayed where I was at, educating those who've already been educated. poorly. Like giving them what they need to actually be able to, and it's sad. It's like, I shouldn't have to do that. They should be learning that when they're in school, paying their money to go to school. But sadly, they don't learn the stuff that they really need to succeed in this industry right now. So I hope that that eventually changes one day, and I hope I can play a part in it.
Amazing. Well, Lauren, thank you so much. You've given myself and the top 12 so many interesting insights and pieces of advice based on your amazing career so far. So thank you for joining us and supporting this first challenge in the World Star Nail Artist Competition.
Yes, I'm so excited. I can't wait to see what y'all create.